Hello, beautifuls. You are listening to Bliss and Grit. I'm Brooke Thomas, and I'll be joined soon by my dear friend and co-host, Vanessa Scotto. On the show, we're having conversations about the embodied, awakening spiritual path. And what does that even mean? So what is a real evolution of our lives? How do we ultimately embrace everything? The beauty and the crazy, the joys and the messes, the bliss and the grit that is a human life. Just a little update that we're now putting episodes out about once per month. So if you want to make sure not to miss an episode with our new publishing schedule, you can subscribe in your fave podcast player, or you can subscribe to our email list at blissandgrit.com, where we also send out resources that we're loving from time to time. And if you're wanting more in-depth support as you navigate your own path, your own internal process, we do both see clients privately, so feel free to go to the website for more information on that as well. Last thing before we head into the conversation, we do sometimes curse. So if you're in non-swearing company, you may want to wear headphones. Okay, here we go.
Hello, Brooke. Hello, listeners. And hello, Matt Kahn.
Hey!
Yay. We are so excited to have you on the show. I think it's been almost 2 years since our first interview. And we're just really happy to have you back, especially at a time like this one.
Well, thanks. It's happy anniversary to you both. And
Yay!
It's an honor to be here with you both. I love the dialogues that come through us when we come together. And I think at this point in history, it's a really important time for us to come together and to bring to the world all that we can bring for the benefit of everyone's evolution. Because, up to this point in history, evolution has been a choice we've been inviting people to make. And we're now at a point in history where evolution is a necessity, not a choice anymore. So this is a really important time to really offer this type of healing energy, wisdom, and clarity, because the livelihood of our species and planet and the evolution of Mother Earth is asking us to evolve. And it's critical at this point. And I'm just so blessed to be here at this time.
I love that way of saying it. Like, we used to have a choice and we don't anymore. It certainly feels like that, right? I think a lot of people listening are feeling that way. And, Brooke and I were speaking before. You just published a new book. Your new book just came out. The universe always has a plan, right? The golden rules for letting go. So it's a wonderful book. And we're sitting here and we're thinking, but we have to take this opportunity to speak about the global crisis that's upon us, because it's really what's on all of our minds. And it's what is, I think, most needed for each and every person who's going to be tuning into this. So, we're sitting here, we're thinking about your body of work, and we're thinking about the title of the book, The Universe Always Has a Plan, and you wrote Everything is Here to Help You. And we're saying, there's got to be people sitting here right now going, oh, come on. How could this be, part of some universal plan? And that's especially true because some people have extreme challenges, extreme traumas happening. So how can we begin to take a look at this larger perspective of rhyme and reason in the universe during such a crazy time like this?
Well, I think what's interesting is that for a lot of us who have been on the spiritual journey for quite some time, maybe for most of our lives, maybe for 100 lifetimes or so, that's what it feels like for a lot of light workers. We've been at this for lifetimes. And what we're now seeing in the world is we're seeing a shift from the spiritual path being an individual choice point to now becoming what it looks like when the collective reality or a large percent of humanity is ushered into the same spiritual path a lot of us have been on for quite some time. So when an individual is going through the expansion and awakening process, we call that awakening. It involves dark night of the soul and the ego's last stand and all these very critical levels of expansion and integration as one comes into alignment with their true self. When we see this happening on a collective level, we call that collective awakening ascension. And so by and large, what we're seeing is a manifestation with coronavirus. And what it's ushering humanity into is we're kind of seeing humanity thrust into a collective dark night of the soul process. And we are seeing humanity being ushered into the fifth dimension. But first, before we get into the fifth, we have to pass through the fourth, the fourth being the dimension of time. So for a lot of people who have unfortunately lost jobs or are home with their children, they find themselves having a lot more time to deepen relationships with their loved ones, with their partners, with their families, and of course within themselves. And the way in which we deepen these relationships is by the things that life brings up inside of us to be healed and looked at and embraced. And so as we pass through the dimension of time, some of us are going to feel, and those of us who have been doing the work feel time is speeding up and we're accelerating. For some in the world that have not been doing the inner work because it wasn't a part of their reality or perception, now we find their reality time is slowing down. They have a lot of time to do the very vulnerable, deep work that perhaps for them is brand new. And with no surprise, we have a variety of responses the world is having, making it about the external things in sight, when really it's an invitation into a much deeper journey that of all of us become aligned as we make our way through the fourth dimension. Individually and collectively, we help this planet align into fifth dimensional unity consciousness, which is the beginning of a recreation of our human society. And our way of living is not only changing right now, but it's permanently changed, and it's going to continue to change, and thankfully only changing for the better.
Yeah. I found the subtitle of your book, The Golden Rules for Letting Go, extra interesting after, because I received the book maybe 2-3 weeks or so before everything changed in the world. And Vanessa and I were talking before we connected with you, and we were saying, you could have made that subtitle anything, like The Golden Rules for Living or The Golden Rules for Shifting Consciousness.
Right.
But you made it The Golden Rules of Letting Go. And I feel like if anything, if we were going to put what we're going through globally with the pandemic in like a big container, it would be, we're being asked to let go of so much, so much ground under our feet, everything, jobs, retirement funds, that the kids go to school during the day, all these different things.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm curious, when you wrote the book, where did that emphasis come from, right? Like the emphasis is on letting go. And we were also, looking at, you had this wonderful wording that I'm probably going to botch because I'm doing it from memory, but the maturity of surrender.
Yes.
And so if you could speak a little to this letting go and this very deep call to surrender.
It's amazing how the things that Spirit inspires in us, in the moment you think it's for one thing, and then life happens and you go, here's the real setup. And I didn't know at all when I was writing the book this was going to happen. Like, as much as I'm an intuitive, and I intuit a lot of things, and I have intuitive conversations with the universe on a daily basis, but if someone had said to me, now, did you see this coming at all? I sure did. Just honestly, I really didn't. It wasn't what I was told. But when I created the 10 Golden Rules of Letting Go, the intention and the interest I had was that I wanted to I wanted to redefine the laws of the universe from a fifth dimensional perspective. And I really wanted to create a process where people could be on the spiritual path, but without using the spiritual path against themselves, right? All these subtle judgments we do to hold ourselves hostage. Why did I create this? As if I did. On a conscious level, why have I attracted this? What's wrong with my energy? Are my manifestation skills broken? All these misperceptions and all these urban legends that give people the opportunity to enter into a spiritual journey that is really about expanding the horizons of your perceptions and deepening the way you connect with yourself, the world, the universe, and everyone around you, which is a beautiful thing. And somewhere along the lines, the joy of growing, the joy of evolving began, how can I make my life my fault? Mm-hmm. And it got co-opted, right, into, instead of it being my life, my journey, it became my fault. And so I asked the universe, how do I help untangle this mess where I have a lot of energetically sensitive people on this planet, a lot of very psychically gifted people on this planet that are very in tune and very sensitive, but lack the confidence to balance those abilities. And so there becomes this perfume of unworthiness, this perfume of self-doubt and self-denial where people are very in tune, but they don't know how to trust it. How do I create almost a golden rule book of the 10 golden rules that gets you from A to Z on your spiritual journey without you despising yourself in the process? And that became the intention for why I wrote this book. And when I wrote the book, I was going through a lot of healing in my personal life. I was in a super raw state. Usually when I channel a book, I write in the morning, and every part of this book was written late at night in a month. And in a month, lightning would come out of the sky and pour through me. And all I could do was just channel everything that came through and keep pressing save to make sure I'm not losing it. And I just captured this moment of raw revelation, as I call it, where it's time on this planet, not just for spiritual beings, but it's time on this planet for all beings to learn how do we live our life purpose without defining it as an occupation. Because we see in the current structure of the world, when you define yourself by an occupation and something like coronavirus happens, then all of a sudden your worthiness ebbs and flows with the state of the world. And we are seeing on so many levels with this coronavirus that life, like the energy of Shiva, some call Shiva the destroyer, but it's really the transformer, is unraveling the identities that are fed by only the roles we play in the world and our family at large. And we forget that we are spiritual beings living in communities here to usher in something called unity consciousness. So in this time on this planet, everyone is steeped in the spiritual journey. And so these 10 golden rules become the way of how do we make sense of this? How do we better ourselves? How do we grow, evolve, and expand, but in a way where we can love ourselves, we can embrace each other, and we can get through this together as one in that fifth dimensional alignment. So when I started channeling these 10 golden rules, that was my gift from my heart to every light worker, not realizing the moment it was published, it would be a gift from my heart to the entire planet.
Wow. I love that. Brooke and I have always said, you never heal in shame. And one of the most beautiful things about your teachings are they're so loving. And I really appreciate you pointing out a collective dark night of the soul, like of course. And we noticed a long time ago that it seems to us in Dark Night of the Soul, one of the things that's happening is the nervous system goes into states of dysregulation. I was listening to an interview with you the other day, and you said something like, I'm sure I'll butcher this, but simply that you teach on the nervous system. And I was like, ding, 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 ding. I mean, we know that about you, and we love that about your teachings. But I thought this was a really interesting time to speak a little more on the nervous system from your viewpoint. And a little bit about the nervous system and adversity, like you bring up in your book.
Yeah, it's funny because if I don't hit this point, you have to remind me what I say in the book. Because I remember writing the book, I don't remember anything about the book.
So you.
or any other teaching that I've ever done in the last 13 years. It's in there somewhere, but like I walk around because I have like copies of my book covers on my wall as like a remembrance of some of my accomplishments. And I walk by and I go, I wrote those books. Don't remember any of it. So it's a very strange.
We get you. Yeah. We do.
We feel it.
But, you know, I think if we look at the nervous system, I think what's really interesting is if we don't take the spiritual path at the speed of our nervous system's ability to regulate and reorient, when we don't focus on how can I only approach things that serves my nervous system, right? How can I read a book and not just try to gobble up information, but feel the energy that's coming in to rewrite my subconscious mind and clear out my cellular body. When we don't let the nervous system lead, we tend to evolve and gather spiritual concepts, and we go from a human ego to a spiritual ego. And then for most people, they go ego, spiritual ego, then they wake up from there. And the blessing is if you are blessed to spend the least amount of time in spiritual ego land, because it's a very seductive and confusing place where you think you're totally awake and you're just in another spiritually themed, self-referencing mind spin, or I don't know how I want to put that, but you're in your own self-referencing perception, and you haven't gone all the way into awakening. So when we are letting the nervous system lead, we are focusing on wisdom that doesn't just sound good, but it feels good. And that's the real key, is what makes me who I am. And everyone says what they say about me, which is a blessing, and I appreciate that. But from my perspective, what makes me who I am is that I channel a lot of things from the universe on a daily basis. What I'm blessed to say is what I put out into the world, whether in books and audios, YouTubes, at my events, or even on Facebook, is that it's not just stuff that sounds good, but it feels right. Mm-hmm. And when it feels right, you don't have to turn it into a belief. You can just receive and bask in the energy that is in that moment, a remembrance of what you are, not something you're trying to become. And so I think when we learn in the new paradigm, and you guys are a part of this just like I am, we are re-educating the world on not just what is the spiritual journey dressed up as everyday life, but how do we truly take the spiritual journey that lets the nervous system be respected instead of the ego being recreated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In this time, a lot of people are going through circumstances, because we're the divine in these mammally bodies with these mammally nervous systems. And we're right now experiencing things, fear for our mortality if we were to catch the virus, sudden and catastrophic loss of income. How do I pay bills? Loss of identities when jobs go away, or suddenly you're home with the kids. So it's putting us, the nervous system responds in fear, a lot of really survival level fear. So I don't have an easy answer for this. I mean, I work with people on this, but I find that there needs to be a lot of intimacy to get there. But if we could kind of give a broader message, what are some ways? Because if we're talking about basking in what feels good, it's a little hard to get the container open to receive when we are understandably in the contracted fear nervous system.
Well, isn't that a great point? That, and I appreciate you saying that. Yeah, follow what feels good. At the same time, we have to also go through the process of learning how to resonate with the things that are the best for us. That's another interesting aspect of this journey, is that sometimes what resonates to our ego isn't what feels good to the nervous system. So it's learning to spend time with the nervous system so you know what it is resonating with. And an easy way that people can spend time with their nervous systems is in moments of stillness. Like in this interview right now, there's a transmission of energy. We can all feel it. And everything that I do is always very specific and different. In this moment, I'm sure you can all feel how much stillness is present in this interview. There's almost a stillness that is causing us to be in this quiet, sacred reverence while unpacking and discussing what's happening in the world. And so really that's a reflection of right now in these current times, life has said to humanity, you've been societally in this do perpetual motion. And there has been a gigantic red light that has stopped everything. And so now people have to go from defining their identity by endless doing to now adjusting to life rooted first from a space of being. And just like people waiting in a red light that's taking too long, or a train is passing and it's the longest train ever created. This is where impatience, frustration, injustice, all these defenses are coming up, because the human ego doesn't know how and isn't capable of surviving in the climate of stillness. So humanity has just been thrust into the spontaneous dark night of the soul, where all of a sudden we are all attending the most incredibly comprehensive meditation retreat that no one remembers signing up for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like Vipassana on steroids.
This is Vipassana Metallica style. This isn't even just someone went to the most sought after meditation retreat they heard about, but they went to the meditation retreat and then they asked the person, hey, where's the bathroom? And someone points them in that door and they go into the bathroom and the person running the retreat locks them in.
Right.
There's your meditation. Like that's how hardcore this is.
Yeah.
So we have gone from doing at the expense of ignoring our emotions. What we are doing is evolving beings, and then just kind of making it all about the gains and losses of external reality. And for a lot of people, it's now going within, but not going within the way spirituality has gone within, because it's been a choice before. Like, hey, go within and check it out. Go within and snoop around and see what you find, right? Oh, I find oneness. That's lovely. No, this is go within because your sanity relies on it. And so this is humanity having a crash course on how to reorient the perception of your will and root the suchness of your choice making from the stillness of how things feel, not just what you believe or how things appear. And so as we take time to spend time in stillness, it's kind of like we're developing a new relationship with stillness. And in order for us to have stillness as an ally instead of an enemy, instead of perceiving stillness as what it takes from me versus what it gives from me, I'm going to have to spend time with it. And so this is where we breathe mindfully. This is where we stop and take moments of profound gratitude in the most authentic way. This is where we're not focused on when's this going to end? When's this quarantine going to be lifted? How many days until we can go back to restaurants and all of the different things? This is where we say, this is reality. And we have to, if we dare to evolve, we have to dare to be the most relaxed, open-minded, and centered while our external realities look anything like what we thought they would be. So this is the grand invitation into making peace with stillness. And this is where we surrender, or as I say in the book, let go. And it's let go of holding out for, I need the external to shift before I can feel better in my body. Instead, I'm allowing myself to feel great now, because feeling great is not a matter of the things outside of me, but the relationship of intimacy I have with them.
I have so much empathy for what people can be going through right now. I love that you likened it to the personal journey, because I know how hard it was for me when I was confronting a lot of my traumas, a lot of my fears. And now, as you said, it's like there's no choice about it. Everyone's being just put in their room and confronting. It's like there's this big black screen of the unknown in front of us, and everyone's just projecting whatever they're afraid of onto this blank screen. And then we're sitting there and it's like, okay, now get quiet. So it's such a deeply intense time for people, I think. And, just to add a little bit to the conversation, you and I have spoken, Matt, about energetically sensitive people, which are most of the people listening to this show, most of you, are also feeling not just their own experience, but the experience of the world.
That's right
now. So maybe we can just touch on that to give some, larger context to what someone may be facing.
Well, it's a great thing to add into this mix, because a lot of us as empaths are holding space for the awakening of the planet. And what the big mix-up has been is the mix-up of what is mine individually and what is my contribution collectively. And I would say that when you are in the process of waking up, prior to fully waking up, you can be on a spiritual path as an individual trying to individually better yourself. And that's the beginning stages of awakening. Self-improvement, expansion, the cultivation of various spiritual modalities or practices. And it's absolutely purposeful. There's nothing wrong with that. But somewhere along the way, there's a shift that happens. And the shift is, I thought I was an individual on a path of self-improvement. And now I realize I'm actually the very light I've been seeking. And everything I thought that was mine individually is actually what I'm helping to transform and transmute out of a world of people who think they're individuals somehow beginning a journey of self-improvement. Or prior to that, just lost in endless enhancement of self-image and all these different things. So right now, we have a planet of people engaged in this collective dark night of the soul, global meditation retreat that no one signed up for. And we are now learning how to be totally still. And at the same time, we're being bombarded with information. Is it a fake news story? Is it disinformation? You know, the political leaders playing the parts that they're playing. Because all of that is designed to turn us to ourselves. And for those of us who have been on this journey for a long time, we have a different awakening and shift than the world has. The world is going through the shift of from doing to being. And eventually the integration of that is going to be that we return to doing, but it's rooted from the beingness of our soul, not just from the perpetual need to feed our egos. That's the world. But for us that have been on this journey for a while, we are the anchors of light. We are holding space for the world to go through what a lot of us have been going through for many years. So our awakening is actually a shift of identity. And the shift of identity is instead of identifying with an individual victim who needs to better themselves and clear their field and activate this, instead, my individual experience is a blueprint of what the world is going through. And as I start to change the way I relate to what I feel and think and perceive, I am actually doing my part to accelerate the healing of the planet when I'm no longer interpreting my symptoms as mine, but my contribution to an awakening planet. And that's how empaths wake up. Because the story is that I'm on a journey of self-improvement. And I'm going to get to a point where I go from being an imbalanced, victimized character to a rejuvenated character. And that's the story. But we wake up out of that movie partially through it. And instead of going from less than character to spiritually enhanced character, we actually wake up and realize everything I thought that I was working on for me was my contribution to the planet as an awakening, evolving light worker. So for those of us that are watching this interview and listening, this is more about how can I allow myself every single day to take all the things I'm feeling and instead of running it through the same old paradigm process, how can I say to myself, the things I'm thinking are only helping me transform the minds of the planet. The things I'm feeling are helping me rewire the nervous systems of an entire world. And the world I'm perceiving is just showing me a world going through the very awakening and expansion that I've spent so much time ushering in. So I'm literally seeing my own evolution reflected back to me through a play of evolving human beings.
Yeah, you can really correlate it, like you were saying, you know, for those of us who've gone through these stages of thinking that we're the person achieving something.
Yes.
And dark night and the complete loss of ability to control or do or master anything.
Yeah.
And you start your book actually with my favorite golden rule, because it's the one that keeps deepening in me and really changing me. And it's such a tender lesson, which is you've done nothing wrong. And I actually think that, well, you think this too, right? It's hard for people to grasp the depths of that. I continue to keep finding deeper layers of that.
Sure. And
just how much, what have I done wrong? And for sure in this circumstance, I think people can also, all your spiritual myth busting sections were my favorite parts. You know, I would just be like, yes. You know, and there's ways, right? Like you were saying, we turn it against ourselves and we can say to the global, like, oh, well, we're being punished, right? Mm-hmm. What did we do wrong to deserve this? Who are the bad ones that are really going to, you know, get taught a lesson and all these kind of binary things. So could you speak a little bit more to the heart of you've done nothing wrong, which is just takes us out of this, like, what did we do wrong to deserve this?
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate that, you know, the emphasis on this, because it's such an important golden rule. when we unpack, I've done, or you've done nothing wrong, or someone internalizes, I've done nothing wrong, really what it pushes up against, or really what it unearths, is a lot of our early developmental subconscious beliefs, where a lot of our memories of bettering ourselves, growing and expanding, came in the aftermath of being in trouble or punished or admonished by a teacher or by a parental figure. So a lot of us have this history where we only were forced to grow and expand as a way of trying to remorsefully ask for forgiveness from the parent or the teacher that we seem to upset. And so we have it in our subconscious mind, a societal belief that says, I don't know how to motivate myself to grow and expand without most of the time thinking there's something I did wrong that I have to correct in order to earn my way back into the heart of approval of other people around me. When we look at the laws of attraction, manifestation, and a lot of people will ask themselves, why did I attract this? And the best new paradigm universal answer is that we attract everything, not because we had unprocessed emotions, right? Someone didn't attract cancer because they didn't heal their sadness as a teenager. These are very old urban legends. The reality is we attract everything to strengthen some sort of weakness. And if we think about the phrase strengthening a weakness, we find that there are things we do really well intrinsically, and there are things that all of us have to work on to develop. Some of us are athletes, some of us are scholars, some of us are spiritual healers, and we all have a combination of things we do well and some things we have to work at. So in life, we're attracting experiences to help strengthen some sort of weakness within ourselves. That doesn't mean we did anything wrong. It means you're great, and this is your doorway into higher greatness and to even greater after that. So we think about you did nothing wrong. It's really one of those things of I didn't attract this, or this isn't happening, and especially individually or collectively with this global pandemic. No one did anything wrong to make this happen. That's just projecting onto life the beliefs we had about being a child relating to our parents. Oh my God, my mom's angry. What did I do to upset her? Right? Real internal codependent dialogue that we're now projecting onto a universe. When in reality, it's what is this helping us strengthen? And as a society, we are very good at doing and achieving and not necessarily as rooted in being, which is why people can go after their goals and not be so nice to people around them, because there's an imbalance of lots of masculine and the feminine has been in the background for a while. And as we know with global ascension, it's about the feminine coming into perfect balance with the masculine. So in order to do that, we have to reorient back into our heart chakra. We have to reorient into being the source for all inspired doing. And when we look at bettering ourselves and growing and expanding, instead of thinking from that masculine mindset of what did I do wrong that I need to be forgiven for, and how can I grow as a way of saying I'm sorry, instead we can say, wow, this is an opportunity for me to strengthen some things that need refinement. I'm amazing, and this is just life helping me go from amazing to more incredible, and I have an opportunity to perhaps strengthen some things I'm not naturally good at, and it might be vulnerable, it might be frustrating, but life is saying in order for this planet to become the heaven on earth that we have created it to be, we need you to step into your greatness to help this unfolding manifest. And so this is not a punishment for the planet. This is all of us have been called into cosmic spiritual duty. We are the first responders, and life is saying, we need you to be rather incredible so this world can become its full potential. That feels more like an honor to me than some sort of karmic bar tab we have to pay off. And so you've done nothing wrong is a way for people to not use blame as a way of interpreting through a spiritual lens the reason why things do and don't happen. And if we really deconstruct most of the old beliefs from the old paradigm, we'll find blame, cause and effect, as these insidious little equations that undermine nearly every outdated teaching. Whether it's my vibration must be low, I guess I manifested incorrectly, whatever it's going to be. I guess my ego is just so much more dense than I thought. I must have been a bad character in a past life, right? How many of us we couldn't have all been that character. We couldn't have all been evil dictators. You know what I mean? And all of us walk around innocently pretending that we are doing the world a service by hiding our power. Because we simply, as a weakness that needs to be strength, we don't know how to be in our power without risking or feeling like we're going to hurt or harm someone. So everything that's happening in the world is to help us wake up out of the perception of blame and to help us say, wow, life is calling me into a higher level of service for myself and the world. Life is becoming heaven on earth, and life needs the highest me to assist in the process. So it becomes an honor to evolve, not a prison sentence.
Nice. I can't wait to get it a little more into spiritual myth busting, but I just want to add to this something you also teach. I may botch this a little, but you'll bring it home, I'm sure. But the idea, no, you will. The idea that part of what makes it so hard not to think you've done anything wrong is you grow and evolve, and then you look back at what you did at that time, and you stand in judgment of it because there's this gap between who you now are as this evolved being and who you were. And you've said before, it's like judging yourself for not getting in second grade, how to do calculus, right? And I think that's really important, especially because I hope we all wake up and say, I think I'd like to treat people different. I think I'd like to treat the planet different. I think I'd like to be more, do less. I hope we all do. That's what's happening here. But I think there's this tendency of we look back upon ourselves with judgment instead of realizing we were doing the best we could at the level of consciousness with which we possessed.
Absolutely. It's a great point. The gift or the curse of retrospect, right?
Right.
And I think that if we really kind of deconstruct it, what we find the ego does is it's basically the ego just trying to confess that its ability to change and grow is a very painful process for it, because it's basically going from a perpetual energy of patterning to something stopping the pattern and the pattern recreating itself in an opposite direction. And for the ego, that is like someone driving their car at full speed into a wall. Can be very painful and jarring and shocking. And so I think what happens is the ego takes the discomfort of growth and expansion and turns it into a projection by saying, I judge myself for my past because had I been able to do then what I know now, I wouldn't have gone through that pain and discomfort. So it's just the ego's way of trying to somehow blame itself for its inability to bypass the very discomfort that the ego can't bypass, because the discomfort is the universe integrating and unraveling the very ego that doesn't know that it was born to play its role of unraveling and integrating. And I think that's really important in this day and age, that we all don't have to look at our behavior in second grade or say, oh my God, I pushed that kid off of the tricycle. What a narcissist I am.
Right.
We can all be allowed to have a childhood without spiritually diagnosing ourselves as narcissists or whatever, and really just realize that, and I use this analogy sometimes in some teachings, our growth and evolution is like a ladder. And the top rung of the ladder is going to help you reach the highest heights of that ladder's capacity. But if you don't have the bottom rungs on the ladder, you can't quite get up to the top rung, or else you basically just have a pull-up bar if you only have the top rung. So you need every step of the ladder to get you to the top point, just like you have to graduate third grade in order to get to fourth, fifth, and so on. So, there's no reason for a PhD scholar to judge second grade or grammar school. Everything holds a purpose. And it's the time we spend exhausting our most ridiculous perceptions and endearing patterns that graduates us to the purpose of evolving and expanding beyond it. So instead of saying, God, how embarrassing, why did I have to be that? If I only could have known what I know now. Instead, we say, wow, my ability to transcend that behavior was because I actually played my role perfectly, acting out that behavior at full capacity. Looking back on my life, wow, the performance of a lifetime that I never want to see the footage of ever again. And yet I played that role so well, I graduated into the ability to transcend beyond it. So as we evolve as heart-centered beings, we tend to be humbled and endeared by our past, which is where forgiveness comes from, instead of perhaps traumatized by who we had to be in order to become who we are now.
Mm. Yeah, lovely. I want to talk a little about, so we've been talking some about, seeing this from a different point of view. And of course, because we're in a world where we swing the pendulum to opposite extremes, like one extreme is all is lost, all despair. Mm-hmm. And then the other extreme is sort of the spiritual bypass, right? Mm. It's all light. It's all wonderful. The world's being remade. And one of your golden rules is, you don't have to like what you already dislike.
Yeah, in order to love, it's okay to dislike.
It's okay to dislike.
That's right.
Because, and I think it gets us out of that bypassy place of like, no, it's great.
Right.
There's a lot to dislike right now.
Dislike is the awareness that you are going through the alchemy of transformation. Alchemy typically is when metal melts into liquid or gold or whatever it is. I don't know. but we go from a solid form into a liquid flowing form, or we go from being carbon-based solid beings into these luminous light beings who are taking physical form on this planet. And as we go through this shift, dislike is how our personality interprets the amount of change we are going through, the intensity of adversity, the overwhelming sensation of how quickly and deeply we are going from being solid to formless as a transformational process. And being able to say to yourself, I don't like this, is simply your personality acknowledging that I'm going from what I thought was familiar, that in my subconscious mind has been defined as home and safe. And I'm going into the unknown, where that's going to be my new home, but all that feels to me right now is anything but safe. And the conclusion I make about this transition is I don't like it. And in order for us to use this time in the most skillful, productive, and heart-centered way, we don't have to like it. We don't have to like it. If you're steeped in a very dense ego, you're going to think, if I don't like it, I don't deserve to go through it, or I shouldn't have to go through it if I dislike it. That's a very deep egoic swirl to be in. And there are a lot of people in this world that are thinking that, God bless their souls, because we've all gone through that stage. So it's said with mindfulness and compassion, right? That's the belief of ego. If I don't like it, I shouldn't have to experience it. And that's why people push each other away. They get in fights. Hey, I'm at this grocery store. You're not 6 feet away from me. I have a tape measure. And people are getting to all the stuff that's happening. But when we're evolving on a spiritual journey, we say to ourselves, because most people will say, if I dislike my experience, I must not be spiritually evolved, because a lot of spiritual people have these very lofty ideologies of, in order to be the perfect spiritual aspirant or a spiritual master, I have to like and love everything. And it's almost like we're, sprinkling potpourri on things that don't smell and feel good and acting as if everything's okay. And that's very altruistic, and it's not very realistic. And then if people have the right to say, I don't like this, they imagine that they're judging on some level, and they're not even allowing their individuality the space to express itself. So the middle ground is, I'm not going to love what I naturally don't love. And if I want the greatest shot at being able to love, which means embrace the fact that the things that may not feel good still have an intrinsic value, that even though I'm losing certain things in my life, there's so much more I'm gaining on a certain level. And in order to really get into harmony, it's okay to dislike. Like if we gave an example for everyone watching this, the example would be, even though I fill in the blank, I know things can only get better. Kind of like one of my golden rules in the book, I forget which one, where I say everything changes, but it can only change you for the better. Mm-hmm. Even though I'm feeling as if life has picked me up, turned me upside down, and is shaking me like a piñata, and I am having every part of my life completely deconstructed while having to raise children and be in a relationship and try to make sense of all this, I know the universe has a plan and things can only get better. So we start always with the authentic, real, salt of the earth testimony of our experience. And we simply end with, and despite how categorically awful this is, things can only get better. Maybe today, maybe tomorrow, but I hold space in knowing that I first lead with authenticity. I then follow it up with hope, knowing this is all for a higher purpose. I don't need to know what that purpose is because I've let go. I'm just allowing myself to serve the highest purpose while being honest with myself of how it feels to this human being's nervous system.
Yeah. And I just want to do justice to your work and make sure to bring in the important Matt Kahn caveat that you always give that I appreciate so much, which is that we don't use these ideas to stay in abusive or toxic situations.
Thank you. The PSA I do in every talk, which is, and if you're in a abusive relationship, a toxic relationship, and I think some people innocently get this very confused, right? Where some people are like, I'm in a relationship where my partner doesn't listen to me. That's toxic. Well, it's not toxic. It's just not what you want. And I'm not saying people should stay in these kind of relationships, right? Because relationships should be about listening and enjoy it. I always recommend that. Enjoy listening to who you're in a relationship with. It's a very good tip.
That's a good pro tip for sure.
It's just one to write down in that notebook. Oh, yeah. I should be in a relationship with someone who likes to hear me speak. It's a good one to put up there. It's a good one to discuss on the first date. Hey, do you like the sound of my voice? Do you like listening to me? Is this good for you? Good to kind of get that nailed down.
Good to know.
It's good to know. Before we go into like, what's our astrological signs? Do we have complementary human design archetypes? Before we go there, let's ask ourselves the question, do I like listening to this human?
Yeah.
Because if I'm in a relationship, I'm going to listen a lot, right? But to get back on what we're talking about, which is actually very serious, is when you're in an abusive relationship, what we're talking about is your relationship with you and the universe, your relationship with you and your perception of the world. When you're in a relationship where someone is disrespecting you to the point of confining your freedom, of abusing your will, and abusing or neglecting you on a physical, emotional, sexual level of any kind, our first line of defense is first to put ourselves in a safe haven, a safe environment. So instead of trying to read the 10 golden rules while locked in a room away from an abusive partner, we put ourselves either on a friend's couch temporarily, put ourselves in a shelter, knowing it's not the permanent fix, but at least I'm in a state of peace where now I can start doing this inner work, but without using it as a justification of I accept them as they are. Because if we truly accept people as they are, we notice people who have abusive tendencies and we don't give them a right to hide from their healing work by taking it out on us. So I love that you brought that up.
Thank you, Matt.
I love the realism in this conversation, of course. And, we are the divine in form, right? So we're not looking to bypass what arises for us as human beings.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to add to what you guys are saying with one of the spiritual myths that you talked about, because like Brooke, this is some of my favorite stuff. So the myth you wrote about was reality grows where attention goes. Okay, so you're essentially saying that if you focus on pain or fear, more of it will grow in your life. That's the myth that you're addressing.
That's the myth I'm unraveling, yeah.
Yeah, that you're unraveling. So I just want to read a quote from you, Matt, because I think this is really helpful at this time for people to keep in mind. So you said, as a whole, we are so afraid of attracting more difficulty and upsetting the never satisfied ego structure that we are willing to turn away from the hardships of another if it guarantees us one split second of joy.
Yeah.
And you go on to say, of all the mechanisms that restrict the flow of consciousness and maintain a lower vibration, there is no greater culprit than denial. And, different spiritual communities are different, but there are many communities that are so focused on vibration and positivity, and that they right now will dismiss people who are suffering. They will bright side them.
Yeah.
And so I'd love for us to get a little bit into this.
Did you say they bright side them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've never heard that term, but
it's a book by Barbara Ehrenreich called Bright-Sided. And I think the subtitle is something like How America's Culture of Positivity is Killing Us or whatever.
I was going to say messing us up.
It's a great book.
It reminds me of a funny little story, and I say this with all respect and love to my parents, who are both deceased, and we had a great relationship. But I remember back in the 80s when, I was a kid and my mom was into positive thinking, and my dad was just talking about his feelings, and he was kind of sad about something and depressed about something. And I remember I saw my mom kind of slap my dad on the shoulder, and she said, "Be positive. Don't energize that." As if my dad talking about his feelings is going to bring more crap to the Kahn family, right? Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking to myself as a kid, even though I didn't have the awareness I have now, the funny thing I thought was, wow, way to be a good salesperson for the positivity movement, right? To use it as a weapon of judgment and disdain. Now my dad, who can't talk about his feelings, on top of not feeling empowered in your life, you're now wrong, Dad. Mm-hmm. Yay, positivity. So I think when we, just like what I said before is, we're going from a society of doing, and balancing it out with being. Not so it's all being and no doing and all being, but just having this balance of masculine and feminine, doing and being, left hemisphere, right hemisphere of the brain, personal, transpersonal, individual, collective. We're just looking at all these different opposites coming into harmonious balance. So if we're looking at positivity from a fifth dimensional perspective or from a new spiritual paradigm perspective, the new word for positivity is authenticity. That's why I said in the example before, even though I feel, fill in the blank, things could only get better. Even though it feels like I'm being flushed down the toilet of the universe, things could only get better. That's an authentic statement where we're not denying the individual experience. And we're also open to the fact that as bad as it seems, it could only be a setup for something greater. And I don't have to know what it is in order to welcome it. So we don't get into this superstitious swirl of, I can't look at people. So what's the belief? If I look at people in hospital beds, am I going to manifest the coronavirus? How ridiculous are we going to be in this day and age, And what I love about the current times, is that this current times is bringing to the planet such a situation, such a catastrophic change to our societal fabric that only the most real teachings will make it. Mm. We think about what businesses are going to make it, what restaurants are going to make it, what people are still going to have jobs when this is all said and done. My interest is what teachings are going to make it. And I know which ones are going to make it, and I know which ones are being ripped apart at the seams. And I can't help but watch it all unravel, the deconstruction of the old teachings, with a smile. Because the things that are being unraveled were being used by and large to imprison people in their own homes and being used as mechanisms of projections and communities to keep very in tune, psychically charged people in very disempowered and doubtful places. So as far as I'm concerned, this is just getting us to what is useful. When we raise our vibration, it's not to combat a low vibration. Vibration is not our way of negotiating with the universe. Vibration is simply how resilient we are. Oh my God, life has changed on a dime. Let's come together and do our best. How resilient do we get up and become better when and if we fall? And so I think what's really amazing about this current time is that up until this point, and even recent years, and with my teachings and other teachings, we've all been hinting at this, by the way, spiritual egos. As much as it's like the greatest fantasy, what's the greatest fantasy of a spiritual ego? That it gets to choose what it does and doesn't experience. That is done. And where people hide is they hide in, if I didn't, or if I'm not having the experience I chose, then let me blame myself and bring up a laundry list of spiritual reasons as to what I did to lose sight of that power. We don't choose our experiences. We choose how we handle our experiences. And life right now is so categorically gangster that none of these lofty, ridiculous teachings have any validity whatsoever. And thank God, so that the teachings and the insights that can give people restorative support, heart-centered self-care, nourishment for their nervous system, solace for their mind, all of the things that really work are readily available the moment we go from trying to be positive to being authentic. And again, authenticity is one part, the confession of your most natural experience, no matter how brutally honest it is, with the acknowledgement that even beyond the perception of my individual experience, this is a part of something bigger, and life can only get better. So that's the balance.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Matt. I want to be respectful of your time, and I also want to give space if there's something else that I don't want to treat you like the oracle, but if there's something else that you want, no pressure, might want to bring through. I don't want you to feel like you get cut off here.
Oh, no. I mean, I love talking to you guys. So we can keep going if you want. I mean, this is juicy, and I think this is going to be helpful for a lot of people. Sweet. And when I wrote the book, the universe always has a plan. I always get mixed up with my second book. I almost said my second book. Everything's here to help.
Everything always has a plan.
Everything always has a plan.
That's the combo.
The universe is here to help you. Right? The 10 golden rules of whatever. I just love that. Right? Just throw it on my book titles. Who knows? When I wrote this book, The Universe Always Has a Plan, and I went into these spiritual myth-busting sections where at the end, every chapter of this book starts with a very personal story that I shared in more detail than I shared publicly. A lot of things I've never shared. And it ends with a spiritual myth-busting that, now that you've learned this golden rule in each chapter, here's the spiritual superstition that no longer is valid. And it was really never valid, but it was just, it's really expired and past its prime on every level. It's no place for anyone to hide. And again, the big fantasy for ego is, if I'm a creator, I get to pick and choose what I do and don't experience. And the big flaw with that is that a human ego is only going to choose the things that feel good. And a lot of times the things that feel good are associated with familiarity. And if life wants you to evolve into the unknown, but there's no resonance or there's apprehension towards the unknown, your ego is never going to go there. So it's based on the wisdom of your highest self, and the dream and the fantasy of your small self is that I'm going to merge with this higher self, and I'm going to take the wheel, and I'm going to start driving around and going where I want to go. And of course, the reality is, if you could take the wheel that your higher self won't let go of, it would be anything but the highest destiny awaiting all of us.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like, a child thinking, we'd get to Disneyland if only mom would let me drive. When in reality, if mom let you drive, we wouldn't be going to Disneyland. We'd go to the hospital. Right? And that's not the kind of ride we want to.
So true.
So I think that, what I love about what the teachings I transmit, the heart center teachings, I love that I can teach about self-love. I can teach about ascension. I can teach about, the esoteric aspects. I can teach about the awakening aspects, but in a way where it's not floofy and fluffy and without realism, because teachings have to meet people where they are. They have to be authentic. And it has to be okay for all of us to be able to go through a process and to have this unfold in stages. And of course, for the human ego, the process is that you are experiencing everything by design, not by any mistake. And anytime you are perceiving that the process you're in is happening by mistake instead of by design, process becomes something called problem.
Mm-hmm.
And so a spiritual journey has to be a way of educating you to say what you see as a problem is really a process in progress. And we are at a time in history where we really, as human beings, need the guidance that teaches us how to interpret the signs of the universe, how to take these opportunities, and instead of taking these moments and creating insufferable turmoil for ourselves, for our loved ones, and for others, how can we use this time wisely to evolve at record speed, so to create a new world for ourselves, new opportunities for ourselves and for the world, and how can we come out the other end better than ever? It's going to take us being heart-centered, but not overly positive, realistic, which means just as grounded as I am expanded, just as wise as I am loving, and just as real as I am open to bigger and bigger possibilities.
Amazing. I think it's such a good point to end it, and I'm going to kick myself for this, but I also feel like if we don't bring up the breath, because you spoke so much about the breath in this book, you said the more aligned you are with your breath, the better and safer the world is for you to inhabit. Mm-hmm. And I think if we don't at least touch on this beautiful option for people right now to support themselves through this time, I would be remiss. So can we just speak to the power of the breath and how people may use it to find some ease right now?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. I remember my personal life when I was going through various stages of awakening, and I had this interesting, because I've never had a human teacher, although I would call everyone in my life I've ever met my teacher, but I've never had a formal human teacher. My teachers have been ascended masters. And then I went through the process of realizing they and I are one, so all the stuff. But when I was in my process of awakening and going through and I would constantly meditate and breathe. And I was never taught how to meditate and breathe. There's something I downloaded from the universe. And I would just breathe a lot and be with my breath. I think because I grew up as a child with asthma for 30 years. I think just savoring my breath when I could actually breathe was actually something more valuable to me, because I spent most of my life not having a very deep breath. And one day I had this interesting experience where I was breathing, and I had this question pop into my mind. And the question was, what's the difference between the experience I think I'm having and the experience my breath is having? Mm-hmm. Meaning, if we use current times as an example, there's an experience all of us are having of the coronavirus, various opinions about President Trump. And I'm not saying that because I have an opinion. I'm just speaking to people's experiences. There's the experience you are having about, I like and dislike this. This is good, this is bad. That's the identity's experience, putting everything into these sections and subsections of good, bad, up, down, good, evil, all these different judgments and categories. But then the question is, what is the experience my breath is having of these things? And most people will come up with the answer, which is actually a good answer, if they're really honest. The answer is, I don't know. For a couple of reasons. One, they don't know because most people, when they say, I don't know, would realize I don't think I spend enough time with my breath to know its experience, which is a very beautiful and needed realization. Go, oh my God, I should spend more time with my breath. What experience is it having? And most people will say, I don't know, because I don't know is the classic statement that on an energetic level is the ego beginning to give up the control of understanding. And when we realize that my breath, that comes and goes in some sort of flow, right? I can be surprised, I can gasp for a moment, but the rule of thumb with your breath is if nothing in this planet permanently stops your breath, and if your breath returns, no matter the gap between the inhale and the exhale, then all is well. It may not be well in your perception of the world. It may not be well in terms of the news stories that are flooding our awareness on TV and in the media. But if nothing is disturbing my breath, then everything must still be in universal flow, and this must be some evolutionary process instead of a problem. And even if you were someone who took a breath and left the planet, you would actually take your next breath on the other side, but instead of in a physical body, you're in your luminous light body. So even from that perspective, nothing actually stops the breath. It's just a matter of the breath changing form. And the fact that nothing can stop your breath is the realization, the remembrance that there is something transcendent and immortal inside of you that is not fazed by any of this. Most people think in order to be that immortal transcendent self, I have to learn how to be unfazed by things. The simple shift is I don't have to try to be unfazed by things. I just have to spend time seeing that nothing stops my breath. And the more I see that nothing stops my breath, the more I'm experiencing everything from the breath's perspective. And at that point, we are anchoring the light of the breath, because the breath is the will of the universe. In the beginning, there was the word. In order to have a word, you have to have a breath. So the breath is the life force of creation. And as we are one with the in and out breath, we then become versions of ourselves who are not fazed by what we see in the planet. And then we get to confront a rather interesting social judgment that says, if I'm not suffering with others, I must be insensitive. Instead of saying, I'm not fazed by this because I am a pillar of light holding space for this world to awaken. So instead of trying to be impervious to pain, we simply get to know, while I'm in pain, what is my breath's experience? Is anything stopping my breath? And we actually shift our allegiance from being a person who is lacking breath to being the breath manifested in physical form.
That is like good honey through my body.
I love that, good honey.
Perfect.
So you have good honey, and what was the other one? Bright
siding.
Bright siding. We got good words today.
Bright siding?
Yeah, Bright Sided is the book.
Is that like being gaslighted in the most pleasant way?
Kind of.
Actually, that's quite literally the definition. Yeah.
That is so great.
It's like being gaslighted with the positive. You should be feeling positive right now. If you were evolved, you would be.
Or if we were really sophisticated as spiritual narcissists, we turn to someone at the grocery store and go, hey, can you observe the social distancing? Because your vibration is so high, it's really ungrounding. It sounds complimentary, but
we'll have to use that in the future. We'll keep that one. Yeah.
Matt, do you want to point people towards your book and towards your website or anything that you have going on right now?
Yeah, my new book is The Universe Always Has a Plan, the 10 Golden Rules of Letting Go. It's on sale everywhere books are sold, primarily, and I think in today's quarantine society, I'm sure Amazon is pretty much just that. You can get the book right now faster than you can get hand sanitizer. And
or toilet paper. Or
toilet paper. And, if you're in a pinch, I'm just, the spiritual. I'm just kidding. The book, honestly, the book is one of the best things I've ever written. And it's a book that is we designed the book to be actually like a companion you can carry with you in your book bag or your purse. And it's just such great reference material. You can open the book to a random page, and it can be like an oracle or like pulling a card. And I'm just truly very proud of this book. And it's honestly the kind of teachings that can get the world, no matter their spiritual background, whether an advanced being or a beginner, to get everyone through these stages. This book is going to be like deep sacred medicine for a lot of people going through this process. So I really invite everyone to get the book. I'm extraordinarily proud of it, to the point where I have to sit back and go, what do I write next? Because that, for me, that was it. But there's more books to come, but this one is certainly a healing bombshell. And for more information on upcoming events when we're allowed to gather socially, I also do a lot of online programs like Total Integration and Project Resolution. Go to mattcahn.org and sign up for my free newsletter. And, really it's about creating a global community of heart-centered consciousness and giving us all as energetically sensitive beings a place where we can connect with others of like mind and do the kind of work we were born to do, and really just come together and help create a different planet. But again, instead of it being positive, trying to take down negative, it's authenticity rising out of the ashes of defeated deception.
Boom. Thank you.
Mic drop.
We love interviewing you, and I think this conversation is such a gift. I know it was to me, and I think it will be to a lot of people who are listening. So thank you so much for giving us your time, Matt.
Thank you. It's always an honor to be with you guys. I love you both.
We love you. Have a great day.
I do.
Thank you so much for being a part of our community and for listening to today's show. The show notes, including any of the resources we mentioned, live at blissandgrit.com. If you're wanting more support, you can also go to the website to find more information on our private coaching practices, and we are accepting new clients at this time. And you can also find us on Facebook and on Instagram, where we're Bliss and Grit Podcast. We're so grateful for the reviews you've written, for the membership support that you've provided, and for all of the notes that you send. Thank you. And we will be back next month.